Welcome to this Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely dark case study set right in the shadows of Kolkata. Specifically, we're looking at the seemingly peaceful grounds of St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church. Now, this wasn't just your average church. It was actually a nun hostel, a sanctuary for young women who'd given up worldly attachments to dedicate themselves entirely to faith. But, as we're going to see, the walls of this sacred place were hiding a darkness so deep, it literally shattered that peace forever. The story we're unpacking today is chilling, it's tragic, and it really forces us to look at what happens when the people preaching salvation are actually the ones committing the ultimate sins.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because on the surface, a new trainee nun showing up shouldn't trigger a total catastrophe, right? Yet, that is exactly what happened here. It makes you wonder, how does a place completely dedicated to light turn into a battleground for utter darkness? What sinister secret is actually buried beneath these holy grounds? As we piece this timeline together from our source material, we are going to uncover a mystery that is honestly as cinematic as it is completely grim. Let's walk through this timeline of terror and see what really went down.
So the whole thing kicks off on the last Saturday of March. Mother Superior Agnes introduces a 22-year-old woman named Maria to the rest of the nuns, and she actually calls her God's special child. But the thing is, Maria doesn't look like someone who just found her spiritual calling. Not at all. She's wearing this mask of just deep, impenetrable sorrow. No eye contact, absolutely zero emotion. A fellow nun, Ruma, picks up on this overwhelming sense of dread right away. She actually notes that there's just something in her eyes and suspects Maria was forced to be there. This immediate heavy unease, that's our very first clue that Maria brought something unimaginable through those hostile doors.
You know what? That unease escalates into pure nightmare fuel so incredibly fast. Late at night, Ruma is driven by this mix of curiosity and pure fear, so she peeks through the window into Maria's room. And what she sees makes her let out an absolute blood-curdling scream. She sees Maria sitting on a chair, but her body is unnaturally contorted. We're talking twisted backward like a discarded rubber doll. And when Maria turns toward the window, Ruma doesn't see eyes. She sees pitch-black hollows where her eyes should be, and teeth that look as black as burning coal.
Hearing that scream, Mother Agnes and the other nuns come rushing in. Agnes steps toward the room armed with a holy cross. But Maria, she leaps from her chair like a wild animal. She growls. She smacks the holy cross right out of the way. Then, her fingers actually bend backward with a sickening cracking sound, and she lunges at Mother Agnes, violently biting and literally chewing the flesh right off the woman's hand. As Maria backs away, she starts muttering in these bizarre dual voices. It sounded like multiple people were speaking at the exact same time, all coming from her single throat.
Realizing they are way out of their depth and dealing with some kind of dark force, they bring in Father Steve the very next morning. He sets up a very structured intervention. First, he gathers the remaining nuns to form this wall of continuous prayer right outside the door. Then, clutching a bottle of holy water, he bravely walks into Maria's room, chanting incantations. It's a pretty classic spiritual defense, right? He's trying to build a safe perimeter to fight whatever entity is possessing this young woman.
But the second that holy water makes contact, the reaction is just explosive. Maria screams and completely collapses, but the physical toll on her body is undeniable. The holy water literally burned her skin like acid, leaving these deep, agonizing blisters anywhere the drops hit her. For a brief moment, though, the violent entity actually seems to vanish. The intervention looks like it was a success. Maria is weak, she's bedridden, but seemingly free of whatever had a hold on her.
Now what's really interesting here is how rapidly that illusion of safety completely shatters. 2 quiet days go by, and then Maria finally asks for something to eat. But she doesn't just eat her meal, she devours it ravenously like a starved beast, just smearing food all over her face. And instantly the relapse hits hard. Her eyes change again, and she starts speaking totally fluently in multiple unknown languages. Which, by the way, is completely impossible for a girl raised in a simple orphanage. That temporary peace? Yeah, that was just the calm before a much, much more violent storm.
At this point, the church leadership realizes they are completely over their heads. They lock Maria away and call in the heavy artillery, Father Edmund, an actual expert, for a full-blown exorcism on Friday night. The atmosphere in that room is incredibly tense, just heavy with absolute dread. They actually tie Maria down to a chair, surrounding her with lit candles, holy crosses, and a thick perimeter of holy water. Father Edmund starts this intense ritual of liberation, reciting these powerful incantations deep, deep into the night. As Father Edmund's prayers intensify, Maria's reactions get more and more volatile.
Her pupils go pitch black again. This wicked smile just spreads across her face, and the voices multiply. But here's the most chilling detail we found in the sources. Mixed in with this harsh, growling voice of a man, there is the distinct, piercing sound of a crying infant coming right out of Maria's mouth. An infant! This specific sound is absolutely our biggest clue yet that this is not just some random demonic attack.
Because right then, the exorcism goes catastrophically wrong. Maria lets out a scream with so much force it shatters the silence and simultaneously blows out every single candle in the room. The actual ground between Maria and the Holy Cross begins to crack open, and as this chaos peaks, we really need to pause and ask this crucial question. Who is actually seeking revenge here? Because this entity possessing Maria isn't just lashing out blindly to cause chaos. No, it clearly has a very specific target in mind. Suddenly, the supernatural force rips its attention entirely away from Maria and points it directly at Mother Agnes. In this massive, unbelievable twist, Mother Agnes's own eyes turn pitch black. Her entire body goes totally rigid. The spirits possessing Maria essentially hijack Agnes, forcing her to speak, using her own mouth to unveil a horrific secret she had buried a year ago. The absolute truth is finally being dragged into the light.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how tragic this whole situation really is. Mother Agnes's forced confession reveals that Maria never even wanted to be a nun. Just a year prior, she was this happy girl singing at the city church. She was deeply in love and dreaming of a normal life and marriage. Now contrast that image with a broken, possessed, hollowed-out shell of a woman tied to that chair. What on earth could cause such a massive, dark transformation? Well, the answer is a shocking betrayal by the exact people who were supposed to protect her.
Okay, let's break down this timeline of betrayal. Father Neil, who was a young priest at the city church, broke his vows and actually fell in love with Maria. They had a secret affair, and Maria ended up 4 months pregnant. She refused to get an abortion. So, terrified for his reputation, Neil goes straight to Mother Agnes for help. During a midnight storm, the two of them actually drugged Maria, forced a premature delivery, and then lied to her, saying the baby that died. But the horrifying truth? They took Maria's living infant out into the graveyard and buried it alive.
To really wrap your head around the sheer callousness of these church leaders, you have to hear what Mother Agnes said to a panicking Father Neil during that forced delivery. She literally told him, "If she dies, it's good for you. The obstacle in your path will clear itself." Let that sink in. They cared absolutely nothing for Maria, nothing for her child. They were entirely focused on protecting their own reputations and the supposed sanctity of their church. They committed cold-blooded murder just to hide their own sins. Broken by the lie that her baby had died, Maria was just hollowed out by grief. She carried this unbearable sense of guilt, actually believing the loss was somehow her fault. She started going out to the graveyard every single night, just weeping and screaming for her lost child. And it was this profound, agonizing grief, mixed with those nightly visits to the graveyard, that basically opened a door. Her sorrow acted like a massive beacon, summoning vengeful spirits. And crucially, that included the restless soul of her own murdered child, who came back seeking absolute retribution on the people who wronged them. So, snapping back to the present moment, right in the middle of this chaotic exorcism, Father Edmund is completely shocked by Agnes's confession, but he tries to aggressively speed up the ritual. He's splashing holy water, shouting these prayers at the top of his lungs, but the spirits, they are furious. Screaming, "Stop! Stop!" Maria violently twists her own arm backward with this insane supernatural force, snapping the bone cleanly in half. The sickening sound of it just echoes through the room. The entity is in complete control now, and it is demanding its primary target. Desperate and out of options, they call Father Neil into the room. He walks in, totally unaware that his darkest secret has just been exposed to everyone there. As he steps inside and instinctively tries to cower behind Mother Agnes, Maria's head just snaps right toward him. But instead of screaming, she greets this guilty priest with this booming, terrifying, mocking laughter. The trap has been sprung, guys. The true sinners are standing exactly where the spirits want them. As Father Edmund is frantically trying to keep the exorcism going, Maria just slowly lifts her head toward the ceiling. And then, in this incredible display of supernatural power, gravity just stops working for the two betrayers. Mother Agnes and Father Neil are violently yanked up into the air by an unseen force. They are helplessly levitating above the ground, totally paralyzed, suspended in midair, and entirely at the mercy of the very vengeful spirits that they themselves created. And then we reach the fiery, deadly climax. The candles that had been blown out earlier, they suddenly reignite, all on their own. But they don't just sit there. These flaming candles literally launch themselves into the air like missiles, flying straight onto the clothing of the levitating Mother Agnes and Father Neil. And because they're suspended so high off the ground, no one could even reach them to put the fire out. Father Edmund just drops his holy water. He is completely powerless as the two perpetrators are totally engulfed in roaring flames.
As her tormentors burn to death right before her eyes, Maria's head just lolls to the side, and through broken, trembling lips, she mutters one final, chilling sentence. One sin, one punishment. The scales of justice, completely orchestrated by the supernatural, have been violently balanced. The life they took was paid for with their own.
The aftermath of this grim night is exactly as devastating as you'd expect. The authorities end up finding 2 charred bodies. Father Edmund is left deeply, deeply traumatized. I mean, he's forever haunted by the only exorcism he ever performed that ended in the actual deaths of the possessed person's tormentors. Maria, who was barely clinging to life with a snapped arm, is rushed to the hospital, where she actually does eventually recover physically. But the scandal and the shock of this whole event are so profound that both the City Holy Church and the Sacred Heart Church are permanently shut down and completely abandoned.
This whole explainer really leaves us with a haunting realization. The rituals, the holy water, the intense prayers, absolutely none of it worked against the demonic possession, because the true evil wasn't actually the spirit inside Maria. The true evil was the monstrous human betrayal committed by Neil and Agnes. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. Can true evil ever really be exorcised with a ritual, or does it just inevitably return to violently consume the very people who created it in the dark? Think about that as we close the book on the tragedy of St. Mary's. Thanks for joining me for this explanation. We'll see you next time.